Yo, what is up guys? Jack Gardiner here. Hope you enjoyed that little improvisations beginning there. Today I'm delighted to show you the brand new amp plugin suite, but it's more than just that. There's tons of bells and whistles in this thing. This is called Genome. Now, a lot of you might be familiar with Two Notes Wall of Sound, and that is kind of their cabinet emulation software or plugin, which is great. You know, it's got all of the DynIR cabs in there, which this has inbuilt too. But there's so much more in here. It's using Two Notes' own TSM or tube stage modeling, I believe, which is a collection of amps that they've created, you know, based off some of the real things, British, American, typical, you know, amps that you'll find everywhere. But you can change out tubes. That's what's kind of different. You know, they have emulated like 6L6s, EL34s, all that kind of stuff, which is great. But also, in terms of the amp model and sounds, you have what's called Codex, and this is fully compatible with a lot of the AI captures that are out there, things like the Neural Amp Modeler. There's two others, and I will be totally honest, I'd never delved into that world before. I've never tried out any of the AI captures until I was using Genome. It sounds really cool. I think the idea is really cool too. This is fully compatible via Codex, which is just their way of loading it. And then what you can do within Codex is you can use some of their own kind of preamp modeling, I guess, in there. Today, what I want to do is walk you through the interface because, like I say, there's a lot going on here. But also, as we're doing that, I want to walk through 10 of the presets which I've created. I think that's the most logical way. In terms of the interface itself first, let's just check it out. On the top left, you have like your in and out level, you know, there's a tuner there and a gate if you need it. Down here, we have our banks, so that's where all of our presets are going to be. You can see I have all of the artist presets loaded here. There's the save option, undo, etc. There is a tap tempo function here as well, and that can be locked to your DAW, or you can freely change it. And there's an automation tab as well if you're going to use certain effects and you want to automate the delays. Just really cool, modern, you know, for people who are doing things in the box like myself. This is kind of what you need. Now down here is your signal chain, and usually it's just single blocks. But if you click here on these dividers, you can move a split, or you can make a split, I should say, and choose where to merge it. So for example, on this preset, I'm using two amps, kind of in stereo, one's left and one's right, I believe. And then I have two different cabs. So the amp I'm using for this is one of Two Notes' own TSM amps. If we want to check out though what amps are available from the TSM stuff, all you have to do is you right click on a component and then you can see the full list here. Tons of different amps here, you know. You've got things based off of, I guess that could be a bass amp. You know, you have this, Soldano. You have Mesa stuff. You have, you know, all the typical ones you're going to see. I believe like Foxy is kind of based off of a Vox AC30, but it's not necessarily a specific amp. It's close to it. It's just their emulations of those kind of sounds. And then, of course, you have Codex, like I say. So here you can load in all of your AI captures, whatever you want there. You've got a gain control. You've got the tone stack going on here. So this is like, Two Notes have different options for that, and that's just further enabling you to sculpt, say, the EQ section. That can be pre or post. You have an output level. There's an EQ down here. You can choose whether it's for guitar, bass, custom, and then an enhancer, which I guess is just adding harmonics and things like that. Covers the amps. The cabs, you can use Two Notes' own DynIRs, or you can use your own via the IR loader. We have a studio delay and then a kind of pedal delay in there. You can see these two here. Now, moving on, you have drive pedals, all the typical ones. I'm sure you can guess what that is. You know, these are basically modeled off the originals. You know, that's a pedal that most people will be after, I'm sure. There's dynamics, so there's the studio compressor. Now, I will say what I love about this before we even hear it is this reminds me of plugins which I like to use outside of, you know, amp models and stuff. Stuff like the Fab Filter Pro C2. The visual aspect of this compressor is brilliant, but to think if you were to buy, say, the Pro C2, that's going to cost you a lot of money separately, and it does one thing With Genome, it's all kind of bundled together into a suite, if you like, and it reacts and sounds very similar to some of the other plugins that are available on the market. You have a volume pedal, which you can obviously automate there. We've got EQs, and what I love is this studio EQ. Again, it reminds me almost of like FabFilter Pro Q3, which is what I tend to use when I'm actually looking at EQing guitars, basses, drums, whatever. It's just a kind of studio grade EQ, really. It's industry standard, and that's inbuilt. It visually looks similar, you know, and it's a great way to get to learn it without having to spend all of the money on, say, Pro Q3 or something. We have like an enhancer, which I guess is just adding harmonics, adding thickness, stuff like that. Exciter as well, doing this very similar thing. Modulation, you've got chorus that looks like an 80s style chorus to me. Flanger, again, similar. What else did we have in there? Tremolo, vibrato, phaser, and another phaser. You've got a studio reverb, again, very analog looking for guys who are into those kind of visuals and those kind of old analog strips. I know I wasn't around for any of that, but this, I guess, is what they kind of used to look like. You know, it's a very kind of hands-on way of doing things, not like some of the plugins that you get separate from, you know, guitar plugins, I would say. But it's very, very cool. Sounds great. We'll hear that as we go through. Stereo width, so that's like a doubler almost, you know, if you're wanting to, say, practice by yourself and just sound a bit more beefy, that works. Or if you don't want to double track guitars, you can use that. And then there's the wall of sound post effect, so this is like the compressor reverb. For those of you familiar with 2Note's wall of sound, you'll know exactly how they work. But anyway, let's just reload my preset and let's hear how this thing sounds. Enough of me rambling on. I'll click another one and then go back. This one I've called Chelmsford Shredder. In terms of what's going on, I've got amps basically in stereo. They're very similar in terms of the EQ. I think it's just the contour and the volume that I've changed. It's based off a British sound. I've got a Marshall style vintage C on one side and a Marshall style vintage O on the other. Using the studio delay, one side set to 32 notes and the other set to 8 notes. And then I'm using the studio reverb. Now, this is kind of based, the reason why I've called it Chelmsford Shredder, I'm sure many of you know where it's set in Mr. Guthrie Govan. Resides or was born kind of thing, and it's aiming to get the sound of the early JTC videos that he did. It's not 100% there, but it's in that ballpark. Let's check out what it sounds like. Nearly. So you can see it's kind of like a shred lead tone. You can get kind of dynamic with that. Really, really cool. Now, in terms of the delay and reverb, really a lot of the kind of echo or fullness is coming from that delay. If I turn off the reverb here, just hear that delay. That's where the sound's really coming from. If I just keep the reverb on, I mean, it's kind of big, but it's not as in your face as the delay reverb. Keep it dry. Cool sound just by itself. It's obviously a lot less forgiving when it's like that, but really, really nice. I just think that's a very usable tone. What I should point out, I never mentioned before, is there are all kinds of presets depending on what you load in as a component. So you can see here, there's different delays that we can use. So say I click on this one, flutters. I'm just peaking a little bit there. Just follow me. Really, really cool. Same with the reverb. If I go over there, I could go in and you've got Cathedral, Crypt. Let's try something like a slap. There we go. I'm just really peaking. I have to be careful of the levels there. I'm going to change that delay. Let's go for a .816. And let's just maybe turn the amp down slightly on both sides. Very cool. So if you're kind of struggling, you know, what can I do with this pedal or this component? You can always look in those presets and it will give you a kind of idea. There's none in there for the amp. Maybe that will be in the final version, but yeah, it's just really, really cool. What should we check out next? Let's look into the preset. Okay, this one I've called Funk Starter, and this is using that compressor in there. In terms of the amp which I'm using, I'm actually using Cortex for this one. So this is a Cali Twin Custom. It's a clean sounding American amp, and I'm using the Luma Mark II style tone stack on there. I've set the input to bright because that's kind of what I want with this. I've got the enhancer on there. It's given me more highs, more excitement in that high end. And I've actually got another instance of an enhancer on there again to just give it a bit more. I'm trying to emulate, you know, the whole kind of DI thing that was going on in the 80s and 90s with a lot of pop records, Michael Jackson, you know, who else? Nile Rodgers, guys like that. I'm actually using two compressors. And these are just really giving us the bulk of the tone. In terms of a cab, I'm using like a Fender style cab there, V30s. And there's a tiny bit of reverb. Let's just check out what this sounds like. It's going to be a little bit quieter, I believe. Let's try something a bit more funky. So I'm not after something that's like a big, warm, clean. I'm after something that's going to cut through on kind of a funk sound, you know. And that's all coming from that compressor. Like I see visually, you can see there as I play what the compressor is doing. It's just helping all of those dead notes to cut through. If I kind of mute both of these compressors, you can hear what I mean there. So you've got like back in. Just sounds really, really cool to me, that. In terms of the reverb there, I've only got a little bit going on. You can hear if I get rid of it. Well, I mean, that's way dead. You know, it's completely gone. You want a little bit. Just sounds cool. Now, let's check out another one here. I've called this Gen Z Instagram guitar, and you can guess what I'm going for here, you know. Now, really, the idea is here to have like a hugely compressed, slightly driven sound. So I'm kind of basing it off like a matchless clean and putting a drive in front. If I get rid of the drive, you can hear that that is basically like, you know, a clean sound. Put the drive back on. It's not like dirty by any means, but it's definitely not clean. Get rid of the compressor. Put it back on. Just helping things pop a little bit. There's a delay in there if you want to use it. I haven't included it in the preset, and I've added 2 more compressors. Even an EQ at the end, boosting in certain places and cutting out the lows, you know, to really give it that kind of sound. Very, very cool. Let's move on to another preset here. I've called this Lo-Fi Nostalgia. And this is essentially using 2 amps again, both. One's a Cortex amp, which is a clean amp, and one is one of their own. And I guess this is based off the kind of American Fender sound. There's a chorus on here. There's vibrato on here. There's a compressor. There's reverb. There's an EQ rolling off all the lows, and another compressor. Again, getting a kind of modern, you know, Instagram guitar sound, shall we say. But let's check out this. Really lo-fi sound, and it's almost trying to emulate, you know, all of the movement that you get with, say, like a tape machine or whatever, and that's coming from the chorus, the vibrato, and the compressors even, really, you know. It's given us just a really, there's all the low ends being taken out. You can hear there. In my EQ, yeah, I'm basically using a low, a low cut. You could obviously bypass that if you want that low end in there. It's just another usable tone. Really, really cool. Let's check out another one here. This I've just called JG low gain. So this is kind of a go-to low gain sound for me. It's based off of Vox. I'm using a Marshall style cab, reverb, delay, and then some EQ just to boost some of the kind of false high end that wouldn't usually appear, but I like that in my tones. Let's check it out. Is the kind of sound I'm always after, essentially. You know, it's this Vox style sound, super dynamic. If we roll down that volume, this is my favorite kind of tone to play with. This does a very good job of emulating that kind of sound. Yo, so let's move on to the next preset then. This is like the 5th time I've tried to record the second half of this video. I've had cameras dying, batteries going on me, memory cards being full, microphones glitching out. Hopefully there's no more glitches and we get to enjoy some of the tones from this thing. But anyway, this I've called Mayorish Gravidad. For any of you who speak Spanish, you know exactly which song I'm trying to emulate here and which player. I'm not sure if Mr. Mayer does it this way. I think he usually has like, you know, a drive to task acting as like a boost. Then he does have a clon pedal, I think. It's a clean amp, so he's using it as kind of like a pedal platform, delay and reverb. The only thing I'm not sure is whether he actually uses a compressor or not. And what I think we should hear is it without first, and then I'll put it on. You can check out what you think it sounds like. Put that compressor on and it's just going to squish, you know, a little bit of the quieter part, and if I'm attacking too hard it's going to bring that down. I'm not sure if John Mayer actually uses a compressor or not in his rig. Maybe he's one of those old school guys that hates them, you know. But that's basically the sound. It doubles up almost as like a blues rhythm and lead sound too, you know. So if I go into my humbucker, which has got loads of output, really cool. Nice. Let's move on to the next one then. I've called this Modern Prog Sparkles. And this is really like a layering tool that's used in a lot of modern prog music. You know, you'll hear these beautiful chords in stereo with loads of delay, reverb, all that kind of stuff. And you can see here, that's where I built. I've got like the compressor on. I'm using the twin tracker. This is, I think, the only preset which has this in to just give us even more of a stereo effect. The exciter to take up some of the top end. There's a little bit of chorus, totally clean amp, you know, cab to match. Delay, loads of reverb, and then another compressor right at the end. Let's check out what this sounds like. Remember, this is for layering, really. I think really it's the delay and reverb in this one that is making the most of that sound, as well as the compressors. Let's check it out without them engaged. Sure, that's a Whitesnake song, you know. But yeah, that tone is totally usable as well, just with them disengaged. You know, that could be a rhythm tone, just a different kind of flavor of it. I really, really like that sound, and it's great for layering. Moving on, this is another clean one. This time I'm using a drive pedal where it's mainly acting as like a boost. I've got a clean amp on one side and I've got like the Marshall type amp on the other. There are mics on the front and the back of, I think that's the same cab. Yeah, it looks like it. In terms of delay, that's not engaged by, no, it is engaged by default, my bad. Reverb, there's EQ, which is more like something that you'd see in the mix of a final track, really. We can bypass that and engage it as we go, and then there's a little bit of a compressor. Called it Rainy Day because it was a really miserable day here, and it was kind of these ambient tones that I was into. Let's check out what it sounds like. I think I've knocked myself a little bit out of tune. Another thing that could go wrong today, I don't know. But yeah, you can hear what the idea is there. I mean, if I didn't realize that drive wasn't engaged. If you do engage it, a little bit of a boost with it off. Something different a little bit in the mids. And what I wanted to show really here is the EQ. I mean, if I bypass this, we'll get a lot more low end through. This EQ is kind of cutting out the unnecessary low end, and some of those mids there, which are low mids, which are a bit annoying, some of the highs, and then I'm boosting false highs, which is what you'll see when someone actually mixes your guitars, you know. But this is, you know, with it engaged. Get rid of it. If you've got a bass in there, all of this kind of area is going to be taken up by that. You don't really want to get in the way, you know, but that is just a totally usable ambient sound. Really, really like that tone. Okay, this one I've called Rock Simple. Now, this is basically just a kind of, you know, rock rhythm and lead sound, really. You've got this. I'm thinking of the kind of 80s bands, you know, even some of the more modern rock stuff. I love Steel Panther. I don't know if there's any Steel Panther fans out there. I'm using a British amp. I've got that drive pedal in front, which just gives it all the gain. If I get rid of that, check it out. Engage it. I'm just peaking a little bit, so I'm going to bring down the level of the amp. Really cool. If you add that delay on, by the way, I'm using two separate cabs on this one. There's a high watt cab in there as well. But if you turn that delay on, you've got a perfectly usable 80s kind of lead. So. You know, I would not say that this is for metal necessarily, but for kind of rocky rhythms, or, I mean, even if you split the coils there. That's a very modern, usable sound, I would say. But that one is super simple. Now, the last one, I've called this Splawn Lead, and I might be totally wrong, but I remember good friend of mine, absolute hero, almost like a second father figure, Rick Graham. I'm sure many of you know who he is. I used to go over to his house sometimes, and he had, was it a Splawn amp? And I think that this is kind of based off of this capture. Could be totally wrong, but it reminded me of it totally. You know, it was taking me back to going over to his house, and I was playing through this amp. Now, essentially, it's using Cortex's AI modeling thing. I'm not using the tone stack in this one. I've just got an enhancer to boost some of the highs. There's some delay, reverb. There's an EQ that's bypassed by default, but you could engage it to get more of that studio sound, and like a Marshall style cab there. But let's just check it out. At the moment, it's kind of set to low gain, but you can get really high gain with this. I might just bring down the volume a tiny bit in case I peak. It's saying that it's missing. So let me just get that back in there. Where was it? Spawn. It's kind of low gain at the moment. You still shred with it. But if I give myself more gain, check out this, it becomes a shred machine. Reminded me of back in the day with Ray. I can't play anything like that guy, but that is what it reminded me of. That's how he used to sound, you know. Could be totally wrong. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Anyway, let's just engage that EQ, and this is more like something you would hear in a final mix of a track, so it's not getting in the way of, you know, other elements, but this sounds like this. Total shred machine, this one. I could play that all day. Anyway, guys, I mean, this kind of sums up all of my presets and the Genome interface as far as I've got on with it so far. What do you guys think? Is this something that you'd like to add to your arsenal? I think, honestly, this is such a great first entry into this. It's got everything you could need in terms of, you know, EQs, compressors, all that kind of stuff. All of the lovely amp sims that Two Notes make themselves. And of course, that new feature of using AI captures, which is genius. You know, the ability to share all around the world these captures is just great. Delays and reverb sound good. Compressor looks good. The EQ is very, very handy. But yeah, what do you guys think? I guess this video will be released when I'm over at NAMM. So yeah, January the 24th, I guess, the Thursday. I'm terrible with dates. But yeah, surely we should be in the sunshine at this point when this video comes out. But let me know your thoughts. Anyway, guys, my name is Jack Gardiner. This is Genome. I hope you're having a great time over there. Till next time, cheers.